numbers are moving, it's good, right? Okay. Good. All right, we'll call council meeting to order. Karen, roll call, please.
Sean?
I'm here.
Karen here. Kevin.
Jerry and John are absent.
And then I think, if I understand this right, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Is it an amended agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye. Kevin, aye.
Okay, next up is the consent agenda. We've got minutes from the January 28th regular meeting. We've got the January treasurer's report, the bills and receipts, and we'll close that with a consent vote. I think we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. No second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye. Kevin, aye.
Okay. So the next thing up on the agenda is the Peosta Community Center update.
Do you guys have any questions or update? One thing I did say Camelot was going to come get internet down to the concession stand. They did do that last week, so it's done. We definitely have internet down there for the summer, so that's exciting.
That sounds great. At the concession stand?
Yep.
So that means credit cards now,
It's credit cards.
debit cards. Great. Any other questions for Stacy?
There was a volleyball tournament this past weekend, and they always have the ladder in the middle of the court and scoring on the sides. Can that be reversed? Because nobody can see.
I don't think there's enough room.
Between.
Never tried. I know for basketball it's tight to fit two score tables in the middle. That's how we do basketball when we have it. So it's impossible. You were saying so they can score, makes sense. I just, yeah, I don't know.
There were a lot of people up on the track too. And that was no fun too. They were spectating out there. There was a party this one.
There's a word out there. We're supposed to be getting them up as soon as we see them, so.
Oh, and nobody was up there. I don't know how many people were working. There was somebody at the front desk.
Yeah, we usually one or two. We try to have two during the fall, of Saturdays, or Saturday, Sunday, so we can control that a little better. I'm thinking of it.
There were a lot of people walking.
Okay.
Members, I think.
Well, and that's
But there was a kid out there with a big ball going around the track with it. There were other people that were like, I think, spectating and, yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. No, good to know.
Okay, anything else for the Peosta Community Center? We'll keep moving right along then. Next up is Police Department, and we've got the monthly report.
It's a pretty lengthy report, so if you guys have any questions on any of it, just let me know on that portion.
Yeah, there was a lot of new information.
Yes.
So what was it that enabled that, Mike?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What was it that enabled that?
Enabled what?
The new reporting.
We got the new software through SunGuard. That's the reason we have those new reports out. And I just think it gives you a lot more information, maybe more than what you guys want. If you think it's too much, let me know. I can cut some out. I can leave it all in. It depends on what you guys want. But that's all part of that new software system that we purchased.
Any follow-up?
Nope. Thought it looked good.
Yeah, I was impressed. Thanks for sharing that.
If the only other thing is that speed sign, you guys good with that so far? You guys seen it, looked at it? It's been good. So far, it's slowed down a lot of people, so that's a good thing too. So hopefully adds a couple more here in the future.
Find something else for Eric to do at this time now.
Right. Too many.
All right. So next up, it's a monthly report. Next on the agenda for police, we have a personnel recommendation.
So this is a recommendation I wanted to bring to the council for your support. I would like to promote Eric to the sergeant position, and there's many reasons for that position. With this new software, well, first of all, with the police department, command structure is a big thing with police. So I'm just trying to move the police department in a forward direction to get this command structure in the right place. And I believe Eric in that position will be essential to the department. Also with the new software installation, there's admin rights, which Eric will be helping with that, doing the recording management. And also with our WatchGuard video management, that's where we send our videos to the attorney's office and to certain attorneys that would want that. Eric would help me out with that also. We also, with this software, we have evidence coordination, where he would be responsible for taking in all the evidence and managing that when it gets taken out for either DCI lab, when stuff needs to be tested, or if it needs to go to court, he's going to be the man to take care of all that stuff. So with all that said, I mean, there's just much more that he can do for me, and it just brings our department together structurally. And when I'm not here as a presence, Eric will be able to do some admin things for me when I'm gone. So I think this would be a great thing.
I would just like to add briefly that Eric provided a very consistent presence in the department over the summer and through the course of the fall. We had a lot of personnel changes, and I think he exuded some maturity well beyond his experience and was provided with leadership for the department in a really crucial stretch for us. And he's continuing to show that.
Do we need a motion on that then?
We do, if there's no other discussion on it.
I make a motion to move Eric from officer to sergeant. Motion.
I'll second it.
Doug, aye.
Aaron, aye.
Kathy, aye.
And with that, I'm just going to, I have the badge that I need to place on, so. Go up here, so.
Yeah, come on up front here.
I'll send right, everyone. All right. All right, congratulations.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. We keep the happiness going along here. So also on the police, we've got a resolution amending, a resolution setting the salaries / wages for appointed officers and employees of the city of Peosta, amended 2/7/20. We can, so this is, in short, setting the new wages for Eric as a sergeant. Do we need any more discussion on that, or are we ready for a motion?
This is per the wage scale.
Correct.
I make a motion to approve the wage increase for Eric.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Aaron, aye.
Kathy, aye.
Well, that'd be a bummer if you got sergeant and not the pay.
I know.
Anything else for the police department? Okay, we'll move on to Public Works. We've got our monthly report from Dean.
I really don't have anything to add to the report. If any of these got any questions, we'll try to answer them.
Dean, one thing, if I may ask, and I don't expect you to have it here tonight, but seeing what these numbers mean over time would be helpful. 5.5 million gallons. I don't know if that's a lot or not.
Actually, Jim, I have that information. We track that every month based on what's pumped and what's billed for the water. So in December, we usually provide a water loss report, it's called, for the council. I certainly can get that for you.
Okay. I think I just spent one of my, I'm the new mayor, I get to ask a dumb questions. All right, anything else on the monthly report? So next up is the stormwater ordinance.
You know, we briefly discussed this Thursday. I would request you consider tabling this. I'm just not comfortable with the amount of clarity I'm able to bring to you guys at this point. So I would just like a couple of weeks to get you some more plain English explanation for that, so that everybody feels good about the ordinance.
Yeah, from our initial conversation, it was clear this was rather complicated.
It is, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table it.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy,
Did we have somebody here to talk about that tonight?
No.
Okay, good. All right. Also under Public Works, we've got the next on the agenda, the wastewater treatment facility engineering agreement amendment number 2.
I think I visited with IW just briefly today. I think they like to just launch into actually the next agenda item and sort of cover them both at once because they are related to each other and it'd be easier to discuss them in the context of one discussion.
Sure, we like efficiency. And please do speak loud, it's sometimes hard to hear in the back.
So I'm Eldon Schneider with IIW, so Jim Bosley is the project manager of the project engineer. Primarily, I've been a part of all the committee meetings to date and primary process engineer for it, so I've kind of helped push this through along with Jim. So I've got in front of me just kind of a 4-page quick summary of what's going on. Just to kind of cover where we're at. So we were able to complete and submit the 100% design package. Got most of that in last week, and then a couple of things that trailed in after that that came to you. One would be the project manual. In case you guys haven't seen the physical copies of those yet, we have this being the project manual. So this is your specs, your contract agreement documents for the potential bidders, kind of that long laundry list of stuff that they need to complete. And then we have a set of drawings, which would be this, which basically is the line work, the details, the general layout, some of the erosion control and grading plans, things like that for the actual construction of the project. So that's what's included when we talk about the project manual and the contract drawings. The other bullet item on here is a general permit number 2. That would be the stormwater permit associated with the construction of that project. We need to submit that for approval as part of the permitting process. And then a construction permit application, which is it's a series of documents that go to the DNR and make sure that they look at this, review it from their standards, and then issue an approval letter. You need that construction permit to be able to start construction on the project. So, and the last thing on there was the cost opinion letter. So that came in as well. That'd be an update to the one we presented at the 60% document. So I can talk about any one of those things if you guys want to talk about it real quick, or we can just kind of barrel through the rest of this and then take kind of all the questions at the end, whichever works best for you. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. All right. So as a part of, since the 60% design submittal was presented back in the August timeframe, We've had a few things that were added to the project. Some of them were kind of decided that we were going to add them at the 60%. So that's primarily what amendment number 2 is covering. There's 6 bullets on here. The first of those being upgrading the water supply to the site as utility piping instead of a smaller, more service piping system. So we're bringing in 6-inch pipe to the site rather than a 3-inch or a 4-inch, and providing a fire hydrant on the site. We've added a dewatered sludge storage pad. This was actually it's an area for us to lay down the dewatered sludge temporarily as a part of the removal process that happen on a semi-annual basis. So that was something that the regulatory agency has added. And then we added a vacuum truck dump station. So this is the jetters that go around town and clean the sewers. They collect some of that water back up into a vacuum truck. This provides a place for them to dump that material rather than just being able to spill it next to a manhole or potentially try to dump it over the side of an edge of a structure and damage to something. So this is a close spot for them. We've added a bit alternate for putting aluminum dome structure and covers over the top of the secondary clarifiers. So this is a bid alternate that you get to consider basically as a part of the bid package. Do I or do I not want to include this? So they will give you a cost and you'll decide yes or no based on what the numbers come in as. But it does require that we prepare a spec and some other information so that they can actually design that and put a price to it. The fifth one would be coordinating with Alliant Energy's subcontractor. You as basically as a new connection to Alliant and a new construction, they offer a rebate program. So they have a contractor that they assign to your project, and they basically look for ways for you to save energy. So we shared a bunch of information with them. They came back and found the city nearly $70,000 worth of rebates to throw at that. So there's some coordination effort that we had to do as a part of that that was included in this. And then finally, they evaluate the outfall sewer relocation. This is a little bit different than the other ones because this is work that is kind of yet to be done. We've done a little bit of background, but primarily this is a forward moving change order, and basically what we're asking there is authorization for basically a time and materials as we're moving forward, for us to continue to pursue this opportunity to move the outfall. That's what we're looking for. And some of the basis behind that discussion is that when we originally permitted this project for planning and for the anti-dag back in 2016-ish timeframe, we had the outfall location basically using the same outfall as the existing wastewater plant, which is all the way on the south side of the lagoons. Now our site is located on the north side of the lagoons. It was kind of a straight shot, and then we kind of moved over sites, and now it's got longer, and an idea was come up with it, why can't we just discharge into the ditch, the stormwater ditch that's upstream of all that, and just not have that pipe in the site. It ends up saving somewhere around 1,400 feet of that 12-inch sewer, so pretty significant potential savings there, and it keeps most of that infrastructure on the site. So any developer that comes in and they want to figure out the alignment of the streets, they're not necessarily trying to figure out a street alignment or another utility alignment when we've got a pipe that's zigzagging through an existing site that we have easements associated with. So it's a little bit cleaner for that transition as well. So I know there's probably a lot of questions about that, but primarily it's a function of us submitting some amended documents for an anti-dag, submitting those for public comment, waiting some allotted time periods, and then submitting the next phase, and finally hopefully getting approval within the time frame of being able to implement this effectively. And the unknown here is just when those things occur. Kind of defines how much effort we have to put into it. So that's why we're asking for just the time materials. If you guys want to say stop, just say stop, and we stop that effort. So
What happens if somebody says stop?
What's that?
What happens if they say stop?
Well, if you say stop, is we just we stop pursuing that as an alternative. So if we have something submitted and you say we don't want to continue work on this anymore because we've gotten to the point of a contractor and we don't want to worry about this anymore, we want to just keep moving on the project, we basically say we no longer want to pursue this with the DNR, and we don't bill anymore for you.
So in that case, we just wouldn't move the outfall location.
You just wouldn't move the outfall location. If it didn't look desirable anymore, you just tell us to stop work.
So what was the extra charges then for the 35,000?
So that would be those first 5 bullets and a little bit of the work that we've already done on that.
And some of the work that's been
A little bit, yeah. We've requested a new waste load allocation so that we can make sure that the spot we want to dump into is acceptable. So we just got that back last week. So it's been a couple hours spending to get to that point, but primarily it's just been a waiting game.
So on number 5, putting the aluminum dome on top of it, you worried about methane?
No, this would be freezing protection. So what we have.
But if it's a closed dome. you're
Oh,
gonna
no.
have methane build up.
Yeah, we don't expect to have methane build up in that environment. No. That would be, so in the wastewater world, we have a kind of a standard that we utilize called NFPA 20, and it kind of identifies areas that have the potential to build up gases that might cause corrosion or human health issues. And by the time you get to this stage in the process, enclosing these fixtures don't necessarily include that level of concern. So we can, if it's ventilated far enough, we don't worry about that kind of issue. The covers themselves are more designed to keep the wind from tearing away all the heat that's available at those still clarifiers and creating an ice surface at the top. So.
And what happens when it freezes?
What happens when it freezes?
Yeah, if we don't.
Oh, the issues that we would have with freezing is that, so there's a rotating mechanism inside there, and it's got an arm on it that skims the surface. If you don't take that arm off or properly move it out of the way, it can get caught in that ice, and if it binds up, it can cause torque alarms and cause the mechanism to go into failure. At the worst case, it bends some steel that's in that mechanism before that happens. But there's a sweeping part, and then there's a fixed part, and you end up with a big ice jam basically at some of those interfaces.
But it doesn't affect the function of the facility if that arm's not working for a while it's frozen?
Well, what it ends up causing is the physical damage. If it does tear something out of the way, that would be the issue, and you'd have to go back and fix it, and then there's less.
Right. But while the surface is frozen, that arm's not doing anything.
Yeah, okay, so does it affect the performance of the clarifier if that arm's out of it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's pretty minimal, so that surface that's removing is scum that might build up on the surface. If there is surface freezing on there, it doesn't usually hurt too much. The water just has to find a different way to get out. And typically when it's cold, there's the characteristics of that scum floating kind of change over time anyways. It's more of a compliance issue saying, am I getting enough of that floating material out, or am I letting it go over the clarifiers? And it's usually worse in the summertime anyway, not cold.
Okay. And do people typically put these on? Cities that are putting these clarifiers in, do 80% of them get the dome in a region like ours, or 10% do?
I would say, it probably changes over time, but I mean, if you go to Asbury, they don't have them. If you go to Dyersville, they didn't have them, but they did put up some walls to keep the wind as a windbreak, and now they have a big hoop building over the top to kind of break some of that issue. It kind of depends on the prevailing winds and how things come over and how cold it gets in there. Sometimes they won't freeze, sometimes they will. You just have to be prepared for it. But this is a nice, get the cover on, kind of helps you a lot. You're in there, you can keep it a lot better from getting the frozen surface on.
So I'm taking it that's not part of the original bid for the wastewater treatment facility. That would be an added cost if we elected to include that?
Yeah, so the way the bid alternate works is that in the bid form, they're going to give you a lump sum price that includes the base scope, and then there's a separate table underneath that'll say, okay, there's a bid alternate that says you're going to include these clarifier covers that are listed in the specification, and they're going to assign a price to it. And as a part of the award process, or there's somewhere close thereafter, you're saying I'm accepting your bid, and then I'm also accepting this bid alternate.
Okay.
Or not accepting the bid alternate. And at that time, you decided to include or not include it in the project.
As far as the DNR is concerned, would we have these DNR process going on with the other site? Or is this just because of the new site?
For the DNR process for the effluent sewer?
That you're charging for now, as we,
Go ahead, sorry, finish that.
the time and
Material.
The time and materials?
time and material.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
this
so-
different now that you're working with the new site as opposed to, so it's like the 1,400 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah, that site versus this one.
So we had I think close to 1,000 feet at the old site, the previous site, and now it's about that 1,400 feet. So if we had elected to do this on that site, yes, this would still have been changed.
You still would have done this, the process that you're going to go through.
If
DNR.
we had decided to still discharge into that same ditch that we're talking about, staying on the site,
Yeah.
yes, we would still have to go through the same process. So it becomes a lot more.
Was this discussed before, the time and material compensation as opposed to the bid to start with?
You mean the original agreement for us to provide
Right.
engineering services?
Yeah,
So the way the facility plan was originally written is that we were going to use that existing outfall location and put in a certain amount of pipe to get it
Right.
there. And so, yeah, that was what was in the agreement. And when we changed the other site, we just lengthened that pipe.
right.
Because by the permitting statutes, I have to use that same outfall location. I can't change that unless I go back and change.
As far as the DNR goes, working with the DNR, doing all this as we go. So-
Yeah, if we would have decided to still discharge into the same ditch that I'm talking about on the previous site, we would still be having to go through the same effort as we are.
That was not in on the original bid?
No. So the original agreement was to design and include an effluent sewer that went all the way down to the south end of the pit, which is what your design documents show right now.
So
So
yeah,
what's changed?
so what, nothing changed. If we ever wanted to move our outfall for any reason, we would have had to go through this process. So,
So it's because of the change?
right, that's what this extra dollars is for. But again, Dean would contend that even if we would have stayed at actually the original site, his preference was to move this outfall anyway. So,
Right, but that was the 35,000, right?
right, so we were going to spend the money to move the outfall,
Right.
whether at the first site or the second site.
But the material and time compensation,
That's
that's new.
Right, that's for 35 covers what's been done to now, which is some of that all the waste load allocation for things they've done now. But right, anything in the future is on this time and material. Excuse me. Which is what, right, we visited on our phone. So yeah, anything else that would have to happen with that will be billed on time and materials. And what Eldon told me, what he just tried to relay to you, is some of that they're not sure, it's billed time and materials because we're not sure how much time it takes. Because when they're talking about public comment, he said some of the responses you get are from like the Fish and Wildlife groups. It's not like comments from the taxpayers.
When they find out about it, you mean?
Correct. So we could get no comments and it could be
Sure.
relatively simple, but there could be, I don't know, weird tabs that have to be studied, or there could be other concerns.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, and the other part of that too is depending on when everything comes back, in terms of those waiting periods, we may be still, depending on how things go with the review that DOC has to do on these documents for us to get the approval from the funding agencies and from the wastewater construction permit, we may be able to enact this as an addendum to the actual bid documents, which would be relatively simple because we just show the design and then we have that's included in the base bid. Or if we already have a contractor awarded to, then we're dealing with it as a potential change order situation. You have to negotiate with that potential that contractor at the time on what the savings may be. And both of those things just have different levels of engagement that might be needed. So we just felt it was best to offer this as just something we track separately as our efforts related to this. Just put it under a different task number, and we just bill it as we use it, rather than try to put some round number to it and say this is going to cover it no matter what.
So are you saying your time and materials may be in this 35,000? I'm not saying.
It's not. It would be, it's basically
It's gonna be
saying that, it's basically giving us approval to continue to pursue this on a time and materials basis, kind of like an additional service or something else that we would do. Just it's an additional service. That's all we're trying to say is this is definitely out of the scope of what we originally agreed to. We want to offer this service, and it's at just our rate structure for our fees until it becomes evident that you don't want to pursue this anymore.
I thought that part of the work was done about changing the outfall.
What's that?
I thought we were already working on that.
We are already working on it. We haven't had a significant fee, we haven't had significant hours dedicated to it because the first step in that is requesting what's called a waste load allocation, which is just resubmitting some documentation that we gave them 2 years ago and then waiting for them to get back to us. So maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 hours that I've dedicated to it.
So they haven't gotten back to us.
They just got back to us, and so, I didn't know when they were going to get back to us, but they just got back to us last week, and it still looks like it's a feasible situation to discharge into that swale. But the next step is, do we want to go through the permitting process where we adjust all these previously submitted documents?
Okay, and then on the clarifiers, if that alternate bid comes in and they decide they want it, will you be able to give us, knowing how they're going to do it, then will you be able to give us a firmer number or not? On the clarifiers, if they decide to go with it on that alternative bid,
Yes.
and you see the design, then will you be able to give us more of a set number of what it's going to
That
cost?
would be a quote.
So that we can-
Yeah, the bid will be how much
That'll be your bid.
it'll be how much the contractor wants to
Sharon,
charge.
it's already in the bidding documents on the plans, so we're gonna get a price for it in the bidding, so you will know what that price is, and then you make a decision if you wanna go through with it once you see the price after the bid opening.
Yeah, we know what their price would be, but as far as what work you'll have to do afterwards is what I was reading in here, I thought. That we don't have a firm price.
Yes. Okay. So if you do choose to do it, and we need to have any changes in design to accommodate whatever we receive back, we would need to look at that at that time. So if
Then you'd be more apt to be able to tell us.
yeah, and primarily what it is you've got a tank top wall that these have to sit on, and they've got connection points along the top of that wall with anchors. And if they come in and say that they need anchors on this spacing and whatnot, we may need to add additional rebar or other kinds of plates maybe to that top of structure so that they have a better anchorage point. And so there's some just geometry situations that if it becomes an issue where we have to add more stuff to that, we would come back and just let you know, hey, we need to do additional work. If there is no additional work, and they're good with what the design is and it'll work, there really isn't anything. So.
Would that depend on the type of cover element?
Not really. I mean, they're gonna have vertical walls, and it's gonna go all around the perimeter. There's just extra time involved with making sure that the stairs from the clarifier match up with the stairs to get from ground up to the clarifier. Make sure the door isn't only 6 feet tall, and you knock your head every time you come in. Just various coordination things. If they use let's just say that you want to use a 10-sided design or an 8-sided design, it might change anchorage location.
That's why I said it would depend on the cover.
Yeah.
The other thing, if we're at 100% on our planning, would we ever decide with metals in the waste part?
with the metals and the wastewater. So that's kind of been a separate process. Are you talking about in the lagoon sludge or in the
What are we gonna do with the new one?
the new one?
How are we gonna avoid being in violation?
So the city is separately working on a separate project to identify industrial users that may be contributing to the metals that go into the collection system, and working on treatment agreements to help them or make sure that they are discharging to special limits. So that's something we actually have a proposal to you guys for, but it hasn't gotten to this
And that's
council
what
yet.
we discussed that on Thursday, that's
Well, early on in this process, I know we discussed very early on.
Yep.
And I know they said they wanted that, the intent was to get it out before it,
Yep.
are we gonna be able to do that?
I'm hoping that we can hit that timeline still. We've been kind of hitting at it occasionally every once in a while, but my goal is to kind of give it a little bit of life here near the end and try to get it so that at least we've identified those sources and identified what those limits that they should be hitting need to be prior to us having to need to face that issue.
What is our end of that? What are we gonna have to do?
So I don't know how far you want me to get into the proposal.
I mean,
It's not on your agenda. I don't want to overdo it here, but the goal that I have is that you will be able to get an ordinance in place that allows you to have treatment agreements with specific industries.
we're gonna have to, but I mean, to get the process, what's it gonna take to get these people in compliance? Do we need more equipment on their end and our end? Or-
Well, that's what we need to find out. More than likely, what's going to happen is you don't need more equipment on your end. The goal is to, yes, stop it at the source rather than let it get there and try to deal with it, because most anything that I design at that plant is either going to be prohibitively expensive to remove it. Anything that I have there right now is likely not going to remove it to a significant level that if you have that, I can't really change how much it removes. It's just by the nature of the biology is going to remove some. But I can't really affect that too well unless I install a specific piece of equipment that is essentially cost prohibitive. So generally what you try to do is take it back to the source and say, you have a very low flow compared to what I have to deal with, so you have a much better opportunity to treat that small amount of wastewater where it's somewhat more concentrated and you can get rid of it easier. And it's on you to do that because you're the industry, you'd be the source for that material, and I can't discharge it.
So they would be getting rid of it?
They would be
Not only
implementing,
containing it, but getting rid of it?
they would have to implement something to either remove it from their wastewater before they send their wastewater to you, or they would have to remove it from their process altogether, source reduction being, or source elimination being they change maybe a chemical that they use or change a process that they use so that metal is no longer present. Or they just take it and treat that wastewater differently, don't send it to you, but they actually package it and send it to a facility that's specifically designed to handle that waste. It all kind of depends on what their best economic value is when they're looking at those options.
For this conversation, though, the takeaway is no matter which one of those paths that we end up going down, that doesn't impact this.
No.
This being our current design for the wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah, we kind of had this talk a little bit earlier, what the impacts are that, what's the impacts if you don't take it out? You essentially get dinged by the DNR because you're breaking a permit limit on the metals leaving the plant in the clean water. Or your sludge that you're treating and drying and disposing of is no longer suitable for land application for a beneficial reuse for fertilizer. You have to take it to the landfill. I'm sure you're more than aware of some of those issues. So it's drastically more cost effective to apply it on a farm field. But move on quickly to the schedule, and I don't mean to take all your time, I'm just gonna, the third page of this is just a schedule, just to remind you guys, you know, for the last 13 plus months, we've been working on this design. We've had, you know, monthly meetings with the committee to kind of get us where we are today. This 100% has really been a culmination of all those efforts of figuring out from the early stages of planning to basically this nearly bid-ready set of drawings and specs and things like that to identify what features we want, what types of materials of construction we want to include, and making sure that you guys are getting what you need to make this a facility that's going to stand and operate effectively over its life cycle. So the parts in gray that are kind of on the bottom half of that page is kind of your future efforts. I know just between Doug and Jim, you guys haven't been, you know, actively involved at this point, so just a realization that we've come quite a ways, and a reminder of like some of the upcoming schedules is still half a year till maybe they start construction, and then a year and a half after that until something's operable, and maybe a little bit longer than that after everything's done. So it's a long running program. You guys are injected almost right in the middle of that timeline, but somewhat at the end of this design timeline. So, and at the 60%, we created a kind of a fly through for you, and just it's been updated. I don't know, it'll take 2 minutes to kind of look at this. Let's see if there's a great way to. This is just scrolling through. It's starting at the end of and this is the new one. It's industrial road. Sorry. So as you're going north on that road, you're coming up to, this is the location of your new facility. So off to the left, you're going to see that several of the buildings associated with the project and the pump station. Straight down, you're going to see the area where we would have the storage of that dewatered sludge on the temporary seasonal basis. And that first building is where we have that press that dewaters that sludge and a drive-through for the trucks to load. That dumping station is off to the left. It's just that small structure there. In the middle, you've got your preliminary treatment where your initial water comes in and it gets screened and grit removed. This is your control building where you've got offices, a garage, some disinfection. You've got an emergency generator there. Off to the right is the digester. That's where the sludge from the process comes to be digested and minimized. These are flow equalization lagoons for when you have wet weather events. Water is basically skimmed from the top and sent there, but primarily it's sent to that oval structure, the oxidation ditch, where you've got the biology growing in the mixed liquor, and those two circular structures are the final clarifiers where those generated solids can drop out to the bottom and be recirculated through the process to help that biology grow. You got a couple of things that look like square structures with little structures on top where you walk in. Those are just below grade pump station type structures where we have piping and valves and things of that nature. So I can leave this with Whitney as well, so you guys can. We gave you the 60%. This kind of look at this on the side. It hasn't changed a lot, but it's changed enough to kind of get us there. You can see a little bit more detail than we saw the last time.
Oh, no, as somebody new to this, that is really helpful. Thanks. I said, as somebody new to this, that's really helpful.
All right,
thank you.
Great. And so, I guess on the agenda we have tonight is just the two approvals in front of you. One is to approve that we send in these documents with any comments that you guys might have to the DNR and to the DOC, the funding agency for the grant. To have them review and make sure that they can approve them. Once we get those approvals, we'd be in the process of setting bid dates in that time frame to receive bids. And then the other thing on the agenda is to approve that amendment or two. get through that? Just let me know.
That was one question I had.
Sure.
When you do the alternate bid for the discharge, will that be itemized, like the pipe or what, the structure?
We don't have a unit cost on the outfall. So what we can do is we can itemize that portion of the project so that they give you a number in the bid document so that we know, or so that they're tied down to some value of that. What ends up happening is then they have to give you, I mean, we could partially design the other structure too at this point, bid it as an alternate, but maybe we decide, but I don't know that we have the answer at the time of bid. And that's kind of the trade-off that we have, is that if we don't have both of those numbers, they can just jack up the cost. The alternate, when we ask for the change order to get rid of delta that they get comfortable with, so it's, I could do a lot of things, but unfortunately, the time that we have, if it's not right, then it doesn't do a lot of very good. But we could do it. We can talk about it a little bit more after that. But one of the other things that we did talk about too, I think, is including the phasing, is making sure that they don't build that sewer until like the last part of the project, so that at least they haven't installed it by the time the council is able to make a decision if we've gone that far. So we can include that and say, thou shalt not install this portion of the project until the absolute last minute before you need it. So at least we're not trying to, you don't have to pay them for already having installed it and then decide that you wanted to do this anyway. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, my thoughts are, if it's itemized, at least we know price per foot. If the relocation of the discharge takes place, we know what the price per foot's gonna be on the pipe. It's just gonna be a matter of how much pipe is eliminated.
Yeah, there's a lot of little weaselly ways to, I shouldn't say weaselly, it's not weaselly. There's a lot of things that are in the contract that say, you know, if you change something by some percent of that value, then you get it renegotiated anyway. So could turn out to not be much of anything. But I mean, it could turn out that it doesn't really mean as much as we thought it might mean by the time it gets to that negotiation phase for a change order.
Yeah, I do somewhat, but yeah, my theory is at least we'll have a price per foot.
Yeah. No, I understand where you're
When
coming
we do try to negotiate.
Yeah. All right. Sit down before we get called.
You've done this before.
And
What other discussion would we like? You good?
I think I'm good, yeah.
We're still on time for May bids. Are we still thinking maybe?
gotta find out if that's the review time. It's all kind of up to the permitting process once we get it submitted.
Well, we've got most of it sent in.
I haven't got any sent in until you guys give me the thumbs up.
So if we're good on the discussion, I think we've got two motions that need to be made. One authorizing me to sign it, the wastewater, the engineering agreement amendment number 2. And a second one to authorize IIW to submit the 100% plans to the DNR.
I'll make a motion to approve amendment to owner engineer agreement amendment number 2.
I'll second.
Karen, aye.
Kathy,
motion for the, or do you want to read it first?
I'm sorry?
Want to go ahead with the motion for the 100% approval?
Yes, please. Let's get them both.
Make a motion to pass, I make a motion for,
To submit the 100% plans to the DNR.
make a motion to submit the 100% plans for the DNR for wastewater treatment.
I'll second.
Do you know what I said?
That guy.
Karen,
Kathy?
All right, you guys got what you need? Thank you for coming and explaining that and addressing the questions for us. Okay, also in the Public Works section, a lot going on in Public Works this time. We have got the task to set a public hearing date for Lot 1-1 in West Dubuque Industrial Park. Number 10, property transfer. This is also related to the wastewater treatment plant. And I think we've targeting a public hearing date of February 25th.
make a motion to set a public hearing date for February 25th for the lots on lot 1-1 and 2-1.
Just lot 1.
Okay, lot 1-1.
I'll second. Sorry.
That guy.
Go ahead.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
Anything else on Public Works?
We do have an update on the Brady Street project.
Okay. We'll hear that.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Thompson with Queensbridge again. Late last year, we were here, we talked about the Deerwood and Brady Street project. We've been working over the winter, been working with Dean and Whitney on completing that project. A couple things we wanted to bring to your attention tonight. Dean asked me to come and get some feedback on one item in particular, but I wanted to update you on some changes that had occurred. On Deerwood, when we conceptualized this project, we didn't really know where we were going to end the western side of that as it is your west of Willis. Given the geometries that were out there, we had to extend it a little bit farther around the corner than what we had originally planned for that to kind of flow smoothly. Otherwise, it was going to be almost a 90-degree turn, which would have been very awkward. So did add some quantities to the project on that portion. Also, the road isn't going to sit perfectly centered in the right of way there. It just doesn't work that well, given how things lie. It's not going to change appreciably. The additional width that we're adding to that is going to the north, as we originally planned. But it's that geometry and trying to make it flow well with Peosta Street that kind of created the interesting transition on the western turn. So wanted to let you know about that. On Brady Street, couple issues, and one in particular that I'll end with, that we need some feedback from you. As you know, there's a driveway at the very bottom of that road, and water tends to run downhill. And so Dean and I spent good portion of the morning out there trying to think, what's the best we can do down here, given the constraints that are there. And we are moving a low point so that we can try to keep as much water out of that driveway as we can. And it's literally the best that you guys can do, given the constraints that are out there. The bigger thing, as you recall, when we talked about what the scope of that project was, we decided to do half of a full rebuild and the eastern half was going to be an overlay. And we kind of debated that night. That same day that he and I were out there, it became pretty evident on the eastern end, the upper end of Brady, that it's deteriorated well beyond where it was even last summer and fall, to the point that we were going to have to over-excavate to create a good subbase for that overlay beyond what we had originally planned. Pretty much a great deal, almost to the point that you might as well reconstruct the whole thing. And in order to keep the project moving, Dean and I discussed it and with Whitney as well, that let's just design this as a reconstruct, but we wanted to bring it before you guys just to kind of get your feedback on that, because we did debate that late last year. Using the estimates that River City and some of the other contractors had provided, as I recall, was about $120,000 difference there. So again, we discussed this with Whitney and where and if the money would come from, and I think we have a pretty good idea of what we would do to make that work. And so we really wanted to know if there was an objection. We don't think there's a good solution. An overlay is probably going to be ineffective up there, just given the condition of what's up there. It's real flat, water doesn't drain. That's pretty much the problem up there. And so if we can get the water out there more effectively, what we do will certainly hold up much better than what it has today. So I guess with that, do you guys have any input, questions, thoughts on that change? And Dean and Whitney, by all means, please chime in.
Yeah, I mean, Dean's, you want to hear from Dean more than me, I'm sure.
You did the money first.
Well, yeah, no, so in terms of the money, the Deerwood portion of the project is TIF eligible. That was obviously not the plan. We have the cash saved in reserves from the street reserves fund in addition to that grant. So that was meant to cover the original amount. So we will have, the thought was that we could utilize some $10, really it's not a lot, for the Deerwood portion of the project that would be eligible. The Brady is not, because it's only residential. So that, until we have bid numbers, we don't know for sure what we're talking about, but that's how we would cover the cost of the additional upgrade in the Brady Street neighborhood without impacting bottom lines. Do you want to chime in on your?
I guess throughout it all, I mean, we gotta look at long term. As Steve said, the deterioration that, of that street up there, underground utilities are minimal. For sewer, we would have that option to do a reline if we ever had a problem with that. So realistically, that should be a long-term thing that we need to look at as far as the paving. And I think just bear down and do it right the first time. Do it full reconstruct. In that water with the curb and gutter. Our sub-drain throughout the whole, length of both sides throughout the length of the street, and we should get some longevity out of it.
So. It's going to open up that intersection of Deerwood and
Yes, and you and I think we had a brief conversation that last time. We're widening that, kind of flattening the radius so that it functions a lot better than it does at this point.
It's going to make that turn more of a gradual turn. I mean, by the back of Willis.
Yes. Yeah, right now it almost feels like a 90-degree turn. You must live back that way, or at least drive on it.
I do, yes.
And so that was the challenge, was how do you make that transition and not seem like you made a mistake? And it's basically, we're going to flatten that out so that it's more natural and a natural curve.
So we'll just come up with the driveway on Brady Street to do with the driveway. At the bottom of the hill.
The wider one?
Yeah.
Or what one?
Is that the one you was talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, with containing it, with the curb and gutter and placing another intake in there as well, or actually 2 intakes in there, we're going to collect, the majority of that water before it gets there.
What about Circle Drive and the culvert there? Are you going to go down deeper under there too? Or
Yes.
what will you do?
Yeah, we'll reconstruct the radius up towards your home there, have a culvert that goes under that, so that'll function better as well.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we're looking right now, provided everything goes according to plan here on out, for targeting a March bid on this too. So sometime in the near term, we'll be opening bids. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Anything else for Public Works? All right, we'll move on to the administration. 1 hour in. All right, first up under administration is a resolution adopting the amended purchasing policy and procedures manual for the city of Peosta.
I make a motion to adopt the amended purchasing policy resolution.
A second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
Next on the agenda is the capital improvement plan. And what we're looking for here is a motion to set the public hearing date for the adoption of the CIP on February 25th.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for the CIP on February 25th.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
And similarly, we need to set a public hearing date for the fiscal year 21 budget maximum property tax dollars, also targeting February 25th.
Make a motion to set public hearing for fiscal year 21 budget, maximum property tax dollars.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
All right. Now, the next on the agenda is audio video for the council chambers. Who thinks we need to do something better? So what's in front of us now is, I think we call this a quote, right? For work? To improve, to put microphones, speakers, and video capabilities so that our guests can also see and hear what we're doing a little better than we can today. That needs a motion to approve the proposal from Great Sounds for the purchase and installation of AV equipment in the council chambers.
I make a motion to purchase the audio and video for the council chambers from Great Sounds.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Did this go up since the other night? Or did I?
Well, there's sales tax included, which will be removed. It is the $600, I believe, was on the estimate they gave the other day was just a labor estimate, so they had a little bit of a slight increase on the labor, which they quoted it out. I mean, he was here on Thursday, he was reading things off to me off of his phone as he was, because I pushed him, I said, I need a number tonight to discuss on Thursday, so it is $600 more than what we discussed on Thursday. Minus, right, it's that sales tax, that's the big difference, so that's what, that will obviously be rescinded.
I thought it was, I think maybe it didn't have right, didn't remember the numbers right or something. I thought it was 9. Yeah.
It was 10 something, wasn't it? 10,000.
10, 9, or 11.
Can you vote on that, please?
So,
Vote.
Doug second, Kathy, or Doug made the motion, Kathy seconded.
Yes.
Move the vote on that, please.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
Okay, next on here is the Resolution approving submission of an application for state revolving fund water resource sponsored projects program.
Motion to pass resolution approving submission of an application for the state revolving fund water resource sponsored projects program.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
And then we have in front of us the ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2A of the Peosta Municipal Code, defining the role of the city better defining the city administrator role.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance pertaining to the city administrator role.
That's the first reading.
First reading.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
Thank you, Karen, I missed that. First reading. And then, do we have a motion that the statutory rule requiring said ordinance to be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings be suspended?
Make a motion to waive the second and third reading.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Kathy, aye.
So that carries us through that change to the municipal code. Next on our agenda is the annexation agreement. This is with respect to the land between Leslie Drive and Cox Springs. It's been...
Sorry.
That was well timed.
Thank you.
So for this, we've got the petition for annexation, and the intent, at least for now, is some discussion on this. Do we have somebody to speak to this?
Me?
Sure. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, what I give you is some maps and some information that we'll need to use as I talk to you tonight about the annexation. Sometime around early December of 2019, the Birds family approached the city administrator, Whitney, about annexing part of the 56 acres that we own to the east here into the city. If you look at that first map, we talked about annexing in the area that's inside that orange lines there. It's approximately 10 acres. And as we talked to Whitney about that, that's, you know, we just wanted to annex that 10 acres into the city. And while we were discussing it, she she said it would be necessary to annex the entire 56 acres in. And then after we further discussed it, we talked about the value to the Bird's family of the other 46 acres. We would benefit from annexation at this time, and we would be paying city taxes because of annexation. And she said that there were some things that we could do about reducing those property taxes for an interim basis. So we provided, if you look on page 3 of that, of what I handed out to you, that was the application form that we were given from the city. And so we took that annexation form and we applied that to our own application form, which you don't have. Well, you'll have it on the last page. And I just wanted to go through those items because there's been some talk that we've been hearing back that we're trying to subdivide this 56 acre parcel, when indeed what we're trying to do is sell 10 acres off it. But in order to annex the 56 acres, it has 3 legal descriptions within that 56 acres. So there's 3 separate legal parcels. And those are listed on the top of the page that we supplied for annexation. And those 3 parcels are also on the second page map, and they are outlined in green lines. So there'd be lot 1 of 2 northwest, northeast, southwest, and it goes on and on, and then lot 2 of McDonough Place. Those are the 3 legal descriptions that are in the 56 acres. On our application, we provided the map with the description, with those descriptions on it. On our applications, all of these items were discussed when we had our meeting with Whitney, is to the best of my recollection. We were agreed to annex the entire 56. But we felt it necessary to put in here that we will provide the necessary easements for future construction of city sewer and water, should that be necessary, that the city go through there to allow this developer of the 10 acres, if it was necessary, that that would be the best route. On the next item, we agreed to voluntary annex, understanding that the city would bring sewer and water to the annexed property without fees or hookup charges, which is something the city always says it does. We bring sewer and water up to your property. So that's in there. The next thing is we requested a transitional property tax abatement for the annexed property as allowed by law. And we talked about that at our meeting. And there was an Iowa code given that would allow some tax relief. And that's in there. And then the next item is we agreed to voluntary annex without acquiring legal fees other than those provided by our own legal counsel. And we discussed that at the meeting, and that was understood. I was at the January 14th City Council meeting. The item was brought up about this annexation. And my hearing's not good, and obviously you talked about your audio visual, that would help too. But I left that meeting thinking that we were annexed, or we were in the process of being annexed, to only find out a few days later that that's not the case. So I'm asking the council right now, do you have any questions? Do you have any problems with the annexation?
Do you have your sister's application?
Yeah, I have it right here.
So there were issues with both applications, and because of the position of your property, we can't annex this without yours. So the issues with that are relevant to this.
Well, mine's pretty much near the same thing that was listed in the items that Gary went down the line. The only other thing that I have in mind was, since I am a mini storage, I don't have any use for sewer, water, or garbage. So I asked that, unless there's usage, I would not be providing a bill for that. So that was the only other thing, and then I don't have anything on there as far as an easement, because there's no need for an easement for the city to come through. Just to be brought to the property line, and if something comes up that somebody puts a building up and wants water in it, at that time I would participate in the water usage. The other thing was, we submitted one on December 17th, and I had gotten a letter from Whitney, and it more or less, I asked for 12-year, not knowing the code for the Chapter 368. But in that letter was given a 10-year tax abatement, transitional tax abatement. That's what I would be asking for. It's kind of a unique situation because when you look around Peosta, I'm probably the only business that will be annexing it. I can't think of anything else that isn't in the area that isn't annexed yet. So based on that, I'm forced to come in because of the property next to us, which we have a proposed buyer for some upcoming things, and it would be great for the city of Peosta. So without me annexing in, they can't annex in. So I'm volunteering to annex in, given my stipulations that I did outline in my agreement. And then Monday, I get an email from Whitney as a pre-annexation agreement. And I guess this whole agreement is the same. I think the pre-annexation was supposed to come first, but I had not known that because I was given the outline letter that I thought was kind of a gouge, so we just kind of took that and put in our own information, and it says to put information exhibits, which we did. So we're asking the city to move forward with the annexation. We are still sitting on our buyer, and we can't meet his goals and his start date without moving forward. We did have a timeline that was given to us back in December, and we're off on that. So without communication, we don't get anywhere. So like I said, Gary had mentioned that we had no idea that this wasn't being processed through county and state. When I left here, I just thought council, she needed to see council to move forward with the county and the state, getting them on board. And then when I talked to the buyer, he met with Whitney, and things were just way off, but he didn't understand why we weren't asked questions at the January 14th meeting if there was any questions. So it kind of sat idle. And I had no idea.
meeting with Whitney the next day, and she said that she emailed our attorney on the 15th. Well, I had no idea that the attorney got notice because we weren't carbon copied the email. So I had no idea until the buyer informed me that this is at a standstill. So communication is key. I've always said that about Peosta. They need to talk to their neighbor, property owners, if things are happening. And I guess I just want to get this thing moving. And we also heard that we have 4 acres or 4 lots along Cox Springs that one is sold and one previously sold, but we still own the 2 on the upper and the bottom, and we haven't seen any paperwork on that, so it's just kind of hearsay that those are being annexed in. And Mrs. Leibold, she doesn't want to annex in, and so now we're on a standstill because we're waiting for other people. When the buyer wants to get moving on this, so I guess we just need to communicate and resolve some issues here.
What are we waiting for?
So there were 3 issues with the applications they submitted. The first being a request for non-participation for non-usage is not the terminology. Again, this is all from our legal counsel. So if you're connected, if anyone's connected, they have to pay. So their usage plays no part in whether you're billed. If you're connected, you get the minimum charge. So that needed to be reworded to state that if there was no connection, there would be no charge. But if there's a connection but no usage, there would still be a minimum charge. So that was one of the first things that needed to be corrected. The second is this statement that sewer and water will be delivered to the annexed property without fees or hookup charges. So our legal counsel advised that that statement is not legally enforceable because there's not a location of delivery. So it just says deliver to the annexed properties. What does that mean? Does that mean a boundary? Does that mean all the annexed parcels separately? That needed to be clarified. Also, the transitional property tax abatement, you requested the maximum. So this decision is a political. A maximum is available, it is not required. A 5-year sliding scale abatement is what the council has discussed. That's what Karen discussed with Mary Paul. That's what was discussed with the other property owners. That is the abatement that is available. It is actually very extremely rare that a commercial property is even considered for a transitional abatement. I actually haven't come across a community that has done that. That would be a generous step for our city council to offer that to a commercial property. I know you spoke with Mick, I talked to him today, so we all know that to be a true statement. Very common residential purposes for this ground that is yet unzoned in the city, and your property is obviously commercial, or potential to be commercial. So a 5-year abatement is what we discussed at that meeting, and that is what is different than this application. So those are the 3 things that we had all talked about. We discussed, we hired a separate annexation attorney specifically to draft up this document that protects all of the city's interests, the city's desire to be involved in the planning for this property, and that's why this pre-annexation was drafted, and that is specifically what Jerry's motion said in that meeting. He said verbatim that he moved to acknowledge receipt and authorize the city administrator to work with legal counsel on an annexation agreement. I can certainly apologize if that wasn't clear. I assumed when I emailed your attorney the next day that he was contacting you because you had asked him to contact me. So that's where that communication routed through their attorney, because he had told me that the family had asked him to start communicating with me. So that is where that pattern changed. I think that's why the annexation agreements are on the agenda for your review, and we're happy to entertain any more discussion. That's sort of the path we've traveled thus far, and this is more of a contract form that allows the mayor to sign as well as the annexing party we won't really know what the rest of this annexation looks like in terms of the other lots until we are able to have those conversations. But once we get that hammered out, we certainly can accept some of the other interested parties that have talked about coming to join the city.
Well, like I said, it's a unique situation. I know the city of Peosta has been trying to grab the 56 acres for some time, and here we are, we put it on your lap. We're asking for the maximum abatements. There's no set, with my understanding, no set ordinance in the city of Peosta that says that it has to be 5 years. We're going with the maximum, which, like I said, was outlined in the letter on the 20th of December.
Yep, that, I copied and pasted out of the code, so I showed this is what the code allows as a maximum transitional abatement for any property.
So did you guys have this conversation about 5 years? Did you guys agree? You know,
Just the maximum amount, law by law.
Not true. Deb and I had this conversation last
Okay,
Friday.
we did have the conversation with Joel, and that was the last meeting we had, and it was like, you need to insert this, and it was the first time I seen it, of the 5 year.
so as far as the non-usage of the water sewer, that just needs to be put in there, that you don't hook up.
It's in there, but
for it.
she wants the word usage out of there to connect. But like I said, if it was brought to January 14th meeting that we need to reword this, we could have made the changes and we wouldn't be sitting here today. We already lost a $2 million person that was going to come the first time back in, what was that, September, October. We have a buyer now that's really ready to go. And we're getting hung up on this. And we're just asking the city to please allow the abatement that we're hung up on and the word, I guess, usage to connect.
Right. That seems, we agree with that.
Right, so that's
Yeah.
what our attorney would like these pre-annexation agreements to be executed.
And as far as where the water is going to be brought to the property.
There's no mention of that in the annexation agreement.
Well, mine said delivered to the property. As well.
The big parcel. Was there something?
Where does the water and sewer come from?
The water is available at different locations depending on, like, there's water close to Birds Road. The sewer for the whole property has to be served from the ditch clear south of that property.
Yes, I do have it in mind. It says that Peosta Mini Storage wishes to volunteer annex with the understanding that the city sewer and water will be delivered to the annexed property without fee and production charges. So it's not something that has to be done right away, but if in the future somebody, wanted to have an office there, then possibly.
So the annexation agreement drafted by our attorneys that both, I sent it to the council and you at the same time, sets up, there's 5 stipulations in it. That would be the negotiated points of the annexation agreement. Number 5 being, agreement does not include any financial benefits sought in the application. So we asked him to prepare this agreement and representative of the city's position. Because this is the correct vehicle for negotiated terms, not, the application is not where terms are to be negotiated.
Right, but we weren't given this until Monday.
But, and I sent it to you as soon as I got it.
Right, but that,
Then why did we go through the annexation before we went through the pre-annexation agreement?
As soon as as soon as you added terms to your application, the application that has been used in the past has not included, it has not been added to by applicants. So that's when it changed structure and when we had to involve
So
other attorneys.
technically, we should have got this first.
No, because I did not know, we didn't know we were going to request terms. This didn't exist until Sunday when I got it. I didn't just have this pre-annexation agreement.
Right, yeah. But I guess we do have terms in the one that you initially had. Right? I mean,
Right, and that's again what our council said, that terms need to be in an annexation agreement, not an annexation application.
Which is when we brought in the annexation.
We brought in Mr. Henderson, yes, and he's prepared this document, correct?
So are there problems with the terms on our annexation that will not be accepted in a redesign of the pre-annexation agreement? We just, the city will provide, we're saying that in this annexation agreement, we will provide easements if they're necessary. If you don't want that in there, then we don't provide easements. And it says that you'll bring sewer and water up to our boundary lines. If you don't want that in there, and you don't bring sewer and water up to our boundary lines, then why are we annexing? And allowable tax, property tax. I looked up Iowa Code section 368.113, and it does not read the same that it's on this piece of paper.
Right, 10 years is allowed, a city can offer any, they can offer 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 0 years.
But then why is it quoted as?
Because section 368 gives the city authority to abate your taxes transitionally. It does not have to be 10 years. That is cited as a statutory authority. It's telling the county auditor, this is how we are abating some of their taxes.
I mean, I'm just paraphrasing here, but in the discretion of a city council, a provision for transitional imposition of city taxes against property within an annexed area. The provision shall allow for exemption from taxation of the following percentages of excess valuation in accordance to the following schedule. For the first and second year, 75%. For the third and fourth year, 60%. So on and so forth. But on the one that you give us is only for 5 years.
Right, so then number 2 says, an alternative schedule may be adopted by the city council. However, an alternative schedule shall not allow a greater exemption than provided. It can allow a lesser exemption, not a greater exemption. That was the next sentence. That's number 2, under subsection N.
So has the city adopted that policy then?
The city has the authority to negotiate annexations on a case-by-case basis. I certainly think we could consider a overarching policy that would apply to everyone, but it's also not, it's not required.
So I can't put in this pre-annexation agreement that you'll bring sewer and water up to our property.
You can absolutely put whatever you want in there. You can revise this
I can put it
document.
in here, but I can't put it in the annexation.
Yes, this document is the correct instrument to be used for us to negotiate terms. Can go back and forth as many times as it needs to.
Okay, so we have to submit that first before we agree to annex it, right?
Yes, I mean, and that can happen together once those are signed by both parties.
So does the council have any disagreement by what we're asking for, so we can move forward with this, or fire can move forward as well?
Your only disagreement is the abatement? Is that mainly what it is?
And I guess the usage to connect.
Well, that was gonna change, wasn't it?
When you're saying you don't want to change it?
No, I would change it, but I'm just saying that's,
That was agreeable, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
so it's just the.
So is it just the abatement?
And like I said, ours is a unique situation that, I'm a business in the county right now, and I'm forced to be moved into the city, which I gladly do, because so we can bring more business and things to the city of Peosta. So I guess we're just asking for the maximum allowed, and it's my understanding that you can make any agreement. It doesn't have to be set to, nothing above the max, but it doesn't have to be the 5 year. So actually it's up to the council to decide if they want to allow that.
And then it was that one,
Yeah, that just needs to be clarified. So basically, both parties know what we're agreeing to. That they have the expectation, and we're agreeing to meet that expectation.
That's the pre-annexation agreement.
Correct.
That's the purpose of that.
Absolutely.
So in the absence of any negotiated terms, we wouldn't need the pre-annexation step. We would just accept an application for
Correct,
annexation.
which is how previous annexations in Peosta have gone. We just want to annex, no abatement, no terms, nothing, and it just immediately.
So the activities are, if needed, a pre-annexation agreement, then we accept an application. What's the next step?
The next step is well, first, in this instance, we would reach back out to some residents that we have already made contact with that have some have expressed their desire to annex in, and then another will be caught in the middle of all these parties that would like to annex in. So I've also had a conversation with 2 potential landowners who are looking at purchasing some of their lots that are interested in being part of this annexation. So those will be the first calls, and then hopefully we can get that information rather quickly, because then we have a number of notices that need to be mailed out. So we have to provide notice to the township trustees, to the county, school districts, the utilities. It outlines it all in the code very clearly who we have to provide notice to. So we have to provide that notice 10 business days before the council approves the final annexation. So there's a whole list of those notifications. Now that notification process is slightly different if we're doing a total voluntary or if an 80-20. An 80-20 just adds an additional notice to that requirement. So once we send out those notifications, and it just requires that we send a legal description of what's being annexed, we share a map, we just tell them this is happening, and the council will approve it at a meeting. Then it is sent to what's called the City Development Board, which is at the state. So they hold meetings once a month. So, and their process is also slightly different if it's an 80-20 or a total voluntary. So whenever they get the information, it's placed on their next agenda. Once it's on their next agenda, it's, comments are heard or any disputes are sort of mitigated, and then they approve and file the annexation. There's a 30-day comment period after that people can provide feedback, and at the close of that period, the annexation is final and permanent. which is essentially controlled by us, after the council finally moves on the application.
After the council what?
After we provide those initial notices and then the council approves it and we ship it out to the state, we no longer touch it. They meet the second Wednesday of every month, so it just depends. If we could get it to them right before a meeting, then it might be right away. If we just missed the meeting, it might be a full 25 days before they meet on it again.
This pre-annexation agreement is not acceptable to you, though?
Pardon?
This one she sent as a Monday,
Right.
this isn't acceptable for,
We want to get word for word what we have in the annexation. And like I said, the city of Peosta is getting 61 acres just between the Burns family and Peosta Mini Storage. So extending the abatement out to 10 years is really loose change in a couch for the city of Peosta. So they're getting 60, we're going to be bringing businesses in, and we have a buyer that's anxiously ready to move. But we can't do anything because we're at a standstill. And we would just appreciate if this could get moved.
as far as the abatement goes, I don't know if 10 years is necessary. If you start to add on a couple of years without, if that abatement doesn't last that long, then you're eligible for something else when you build more.
Yeah, or if it gets sold to somebody else, then it goes away, right? So
No, it carries with the property.
it carries with the property.
Go ahead, you got something to add here, Joe?
Whitney, can you explain to me again the neighbors? Why are we trying to annex the other neighbors in?
Because there's going to be an amount of utility work that is done. So the 80-20 rule largely is in place to allow for city to maximize their investment on annexations and smooth out borders. So if there are properties that want to come in, we're going to install utility infrastructure that serves them. Well, that is also going to make available service to property below, property above, property on the side. So to maximize the city investment, additional users help taxpayers recoup that investment. And it also, again, prohibits having a road and then a lot annexed, no lot annexed.
So do you believe that those additional 4 or 5 properties will stall this voluntary side that comes in?
No, we received one of the applications that I talked to you about today, that I was the one I was actually most concerned about. And I believe we only have one other party. Both myself, Kathy, and Karen have worked with her. So aside from the other properties that the Burns family owns, that's the one remaining voluntary. Now, I mean, we have the authority with this annexation agreement. If you annex voluntarily, you're eligible for the 5-year abatement. If you don't, you're not. So I certainly see that as a valuable incentive.
So if these neighbors don't want to come in, you can take them in voluntary?
Correct. With 50 acres, we could take up to 20% more of acres. I don't envision with the layout that would make sense, but we haven't had that discussion.
So you're trying to say your theory of it is to try to square the city up a little bit?
Correct.
Okay.
And allow those who want to come in to come in.
And you don't believe that will slow this voluntary side of the annexation in?
No, I mean, it could slow it down by the tune of a month, but I understand that could be significant to you, but for our purposes, to do it correctly, it's certainly worth. It could or could not. I mean, I have no idea if those parties will. If they voluntarily annex it, obviously won't slow it down at all. It'll be the exact same process.
So right now you have on the table voluntary 50-some acres, and the other ones, you don't have anybody volunteering in.
Nope, that's not true. We have another property that I've received their agreement.
They haven't turned it in for that?
Yes, we have one other application.
All right, thank you.
My question is, with the city council and the city administrator, going forward with this annexation, is there any cost to the Bird's family in annexing, in the simple annexation of the property? Legal documents?
No.
For the record. For the record, 2 is, will the city bring water up to the property? For the record.
In the past, the city has always brought
Sewer.
water and sewer to the property line. Now, if you're talking bringing it all the way up to the property line where.
To the property, it's outlined
south end
on
of
the
the property.
document, on the 56 acres, goes around the roads. It's the green lines on that map. If those 2 things are met, I will drop my part of providing easements, which I thought would be beneficial to the city, but I'll take that out of the equation too, and then I'm fine. I'll sign off on an annexation, pre-annexation agreement. Means I have the 2 things on the record tonight.
The water's basically there, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
on the road. The sewer's down by 20?
By the booster station.
It's about 80 feet from our property, southern property line.
Okay, that new building.
Well, we can't, I mean, that's up to the council, I guess. I mean, I think what our legal counsel wanted was that location is specifically agreed upon. I'm not sure why it's necessary to go on the record right now, I guess. I would.
The problem is, the city always says, we bring it up to your property line, but now I have a problem having somebody just to say that, and they want a specific.
Because when we said that, you said to me, well, what if I sell a lot at the top? Then do you have
It's diagrammed on the sheet that I gave you, on the green area. This is the 56 acres that we're putting in. You bring water to the green line.
Where?
I don't care where you bring it, you bring it to us. That's the issue.
Okay, that's.
Agreed.
To southwest corner?
Yeah,
Where
where
I mean,
you can
southeast
agree
corner?
on a specific point.
Southeast, southwest? Got a preference?
South.
Which would be
Just,
you want to pick a spot on
You're gonna flow downhill, you gotta.
Steve, do you have any
South.
fourth insight into this?
Well, I think what you're asking for and what your attorney's asking for, and it would benefit both parties, is just be specific. To what point on the list are we bringing the utilities?
Right.
That's it. I think it's, I mean, it can be, I'm thinking, how the heck do you describe it? I mean, it literally might be an X on the map that says bring it to right here. And yeah, the water, to my knowledge, of us there, the sewer has to come up from the south. We can probably provide a route that we'd have to come up to. And so you have a little less latitude on sewer where it comes, because you can't fight topography. But I think that's really what we're talking about. It's just some specificity as to where that connection point would be. And that's not atypical. I mean, in a legal agreement, they don't want ambiguity, they want specificity. And that's really what's being asked for.
Yes.
And I think what this gentleman's asking for is a commitment from the council to say, yeah, we're going to bring this to your property line, which I think I've heard. What's missing is the specificity. And what is that point?
Yes.
Just 5 minutes?
Gary.
Yeah. And then wait for that. And if that's adequate, then I think we describe that, if we create the map that shows that, yeah. And just run by him and say if I may. We have water here, we have sewer down here.
Yep,
Was that,
that's fine.
that makes sure?
Entry points to the property.
So you see the access there, can I share?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So we have water at this point here,
From here.
and sewer will be down here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'm following.
You following? Water would be up here, sewer would be down here at this point. Yep. Yep. Got it? So.
So what I think I'm hearing here is and this predates me personally, so I'm going to put this out and look for agreement from the council, but you have an interest in having this land annexed. We have an interest in annexing the land. So we're both trying to get to the same end goal here. It sounds like there's been a number of issues or communication concerns, and I don't want to belittle them, but those are things that have happened in the past. That hasn't changed our intent that we want to figure this out, right? And I'm looking for council nods here too. We
Yes.
still want to do this.
Yes.
So then that being the case, we're just to the negotiated terms at this point. All right, what I see on paper from the city and what I see on paper from the property owners are not the same. So we've got to figure that out. And maybe we get specific, maybe an X will work, or we get specific about locations, but we can figure that out. So is that really, I mean, that seems like where we're at, right? You want to do it, we want to do it, we have to figure out a couple commercial terms, and then we should be able to move forward.
I think you're good with this now, aren't you?
I'm good with it. She might, mini storages might be a little different, but first partnership is okay with that.
Okay.
Did I describe where you're at on this, Karen? Is that consistent with your history on this? And Doug, you're as new to this as I am.
Zero history here.
Steve, you had another comment?
Yeah, one thing I just want to make sure that both parties are clear on as well. The gentleman said he would drop a requirement or waive the requirement for easement. If you're going to install public utilities across this property, he does need to grant you an easement, or at least it needs to be on a public right of way. So that's a non-negotiable thing if you're going to be taking those utilities. And it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, it's just, you're going to take over the care and responsibility for those utilities. You need the legal right to be able to go on those properties to maintain them.
Thank you. I was assuming we'd figure that out in the negotiated terms.
That won't be a part of the annexation agreement anymore. That'll be a part of any plating or when the dedicated, when the line gets put in and stuff. Those easements will be drawn then, but they're going to be dropped from my voluntary annexation.
They come later in the process, I'm learning.
Correct.
Yeah, as long as that's understood.
Okay. So are we at the step now where we just need to see a new annexation, a pre-annexation agreement submitted from the property owners? Is that where we're at? Okay.
And you guys are good with those terms, correct? The council?
Do you want to repeat them?
Repeat the 10-year abatement as outlined in Code 368, Iowa Code.
Well, we'll have to take formal action on it when it's in document form.
But for us to draft it up, we kind of have to.
Well, I guess I'm hearing the I don't feel like the abatement issue has been settled, has it?
No.
I thought we were at 5.
Well, I think that's the negotiated agreement we still need to do, is that.
City's offering 5 and you want 10.
So there's a couple things, right? There's the,
Yeah, what's the others? There's,
they're all listed on here. So you're referring to the same document. The terms that are on here?
Basically the same.
Okay. So the easements thing we now know comes later in the process, so that can come out. Agreed? Okay. And then sewer and water delivered to the edge of the annexed property without fees or hookup charges. Is that standard verbiage?
That's standard for a city of Peosta, yes.
Okay, thank you. The maximum allowable property tax abatement, I think we're still talking about, right?
Right.
And we've clarified and I think agreed that there's no legal fees as a burden for the landowner.
Correct.
So we have just one open issue here, and that's the tax abatement, right?
And the only thing that I had in mind is I won't be connecting to the city because the mini storages don't have or need water on site.
Okay, so that's how yours is different than the one that's in front of me, is that one additional term. And did I understand from you, Whitney, that's typical where there's no hookup, there's no fee?
Right, correct. If there's no connection, there's no fees.
And right now, there's no connection on that property, right?
No.
So that doesn't, I'm gonna look at my council members, that doesn't sound like it's a concern, right?
No.
Seems logical. So we're back to one term, tax abatement. Okay. So if I'm understanding this right, and I'm new, so I may not, but I think the method to work through this negotiation then would be for you to submit your proposal in writing as a pre-annexation agreement, and then the council will consider that, and then we'll have to give you a response to that. Am I saying this right?
Yep.
Jim?
Yeah, Joe.
One more.
Yeah.
Just kind of keeping the discussions of, you know, the neighbors, if we don't get voluntarily, you know, we've got to put some type of schedule to this, because it could go on for a year if there's some involuntary annexation going on here. You know, when does the pieces that are being voluntary in can finally be accepted without a neighbor hindering it that's coming in involuntary? And hopefully that's not the case. I'm hoping it's not, but usually it's not.
Is she aware of the tax abatement? Mary?
Yeah.
Did you tell?
You took the abatement schedule to Mary, or you discussed that with her? 'Cause we
I
did,
sent her the proposed annexation, abatement.
we did a model for her.
There was a,
Yeah, so I had a pretty good conversation with her.
So maybe at the next meeting, you can be in discussion at that time if you're gonna proceed with just the voluntary part of the annexation, or if you're gonna proceed with the 80/20.
Yeah, I mean, once we get this signed, then it would be, that will give that conversation a little different life when we have that. We have received this annexation is happening. Right now, it's a little bit like, if and when we receive this, we might need this document from you. So, yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable request.
So at the next meeting, you're saying you'll be able to determine if you're gonna move forward with just the voluntary side of it?
I think we can make that commitment, probably. Right, it'll hinge on if we reach an agreement, I guess, in the pre-annexation agreement. That's what will dictate that timeline.
Well, the neighbors is what I'm concerned.
Right, but this successful annexation agreement dictates how the whole annexation is gonna go. Because if we aren't able to reach acceptable terms with them, there is no annexation.
But I'm saying if they can if we can come to terms with the voluntary side.
Yes.
Do you move forward with just the 100% voluntary, or are you gonna try to do the 80/20?
We would try to do 100% voluntary with all the property.
Okay.
But if if they refuse to sign or won't sign, choose not to sign, then we would move forward with an 80/20.
So today you're moving forward with the 80/20.
No, there's still a chance we could get 100% participation in voluntary.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's the hope, that's the goal.
But if not, it's gonna be an 80/20.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless, I guess, I mean, we could put that decision in front of the council to the next meeting, and they could always choose, they could choose which path.
Right, because it's two different time courses to get it done.
An 80/20 could never be delayed a year, there's zero chance a year. A pure involuntary could get delayed a year, an 80/20 could not. 80/20 is still a voluntary annexation.
Okay, so at the next meeting, we can make that, the council can make that
We
decision.
definitely should be able to.
Okay.
So I'm hearing two issues of interest, tax abatement agreement and our status on the 80/20. Right? And those are two things that we want to target for resolution as quickly as possible in the interest of satisfying the interest for developing.
Keep in mind, our buyer is contingent on annexation, which he could pull the plug at any time. So we're kind of sitting on pins and needles, and that's why we're here tonight to discuss this. So also take that into consideration as well.
Understood. Thank you. And thanks for coming. It's really good to talk this out.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah. Any other commentary on this annexation discussion? It's been kind of a group effort tonight. We can keep doing that. All right. Thank you. So after annexation, back to the agenda. Our last agenda item under the administration heading is a housing study to better understand Peosta's housing needs. So in front of us is do I call this a proposal? We would need a motion to approve Community Housing Assessment Team Study, Scope of Work, as submitted by RDG to complete a housing study for Peosta.
I will make a motion to approve the housing study.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
Jeff,
Motion carried.
That concludes the administration section. Now we are to our other business and correspondence, and it's the opportunity for citizen comment. Anybody have anything they'd like to add, ask, discuss?
Did the city only get one bid for their audio-visual equipment?
No, we did not. We worked with some firms that Asbury worked with their new city hall, which were much higher than the one we got. They used it different.
They do business telephones at Rock.
Business phones, supplies.
What is this housing study going to tell the city?
Do you want to go?
I'll take a crack at it.
Yeah.
I mean, as I understand it, and what I was looking for when we talk about a housing study is getting a better understanding of what we have in the way of housing as a community and where we might have gaps that we need to fill. So I see this as a mechanism to help us plan to bring in the right kind of development that fits our city need. Or said differently, if we already have this type of housing and we have a lot of it, if we continue to build more of it, That's not really going to help our city grow in a beneficial way. But if there's other gaps, then this would be the means for us to have somebody who's a lot more knowledgeable in it, help us understand what those gaps are, then that would be formative to our comprehensive plan. And it plays directly into this discussion on the annexation. In fact, it's, I think, what has been the spur to do this.
Okay.
How did I do? Anything to add? Any other citizen comment? I see a couple here from school, right? How many? 2? 3? Excellent, welcome. All right, with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Motion to it, oh, thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Second, aye.
And I, Deputy.
Now we're adjourned.